My co-host couldn't make it today, so I'm going to be doing a quick fire prediction video for match 27 of the Premier League. Let's get started with Chelsea against Burnley. All right. Rosier has done a fair bit of rotating during both of the double match weeks that we've seen him manage at Chelsea. And against Leeds in particular, it probably cost Chelsea the win there. But here, there is no midweek match to deal with for Chelsea, and so they are probably going to have a starting 11 minus Marco Correa, who is injured for this match. But that being said, especially with the players fully fit for this match without having to deal with any fatigue, anything like that, I do expect Moises Caicedo and whoever else that is with him in the number 8 pairing for Chelsea to basically dominate the Burnley midfield. Burnley are, well, first off, they're missing Josh Cullen, so that's like the one hope that they had of stopping Chelsea in any capacity. And so Chelsea are going to have the vast majority of the chances easily, and Burnley are going to struggle to produce chances. Now, I know Burnley did get the win against Palace last week, but one of those goals was a screamer, and another one of them was a pretty lucky set-piece goal. They didn't really create that much in open possession against a Palace side that was sluggish from midweek and had a much weaker midfield. So I just don't see them scoring against Chelsea, to be quite honest. And while defensively, Chelsea's still kind of leaky, and part of that is, of course, the injuries. Not just Cucurella, but obviously having Levi Colwill with the long-term injury, for example. The constant rotation of center backs because it's not really clear who can get the job done at Chelsea. While that has been an issue, offensively, at least under Rosier, Chelsea have been very consistent. And the reason for that is they're no longer reliant offensively on just Cole Palmer. There were parts of the season, especially in 2025, where if Cole Palmer wasn't having a good game, Chelsea physically just could not create anything. But now we have Enzo Fernandez being pushed much higher. He is now a lot more liberated. We're seeing João Pedro come back to form again. We're seeing the wingers have more freedom and they're playing more directly. So now, basically, like, whatever with Rosier at the helm here, like, it's basically a guaranteed at least 2 goals for Chelsea every match. The question of will they actually turn those 2 goals into a win is a different one, but I think against Burnley they'll have no problem. So I'm going to say Chelsea easily win this fight at home, 2-0. Next match we have Aston Villa vs Leeds, and just to be honest, this one is carnage. This one is going to be absolute carnage because we have a Villa side that have been destroyed in the midfield by injuries, right? Long-term injuries to McGinn, to Tielemans, to Kamara. And on the other hand, we're having a Leeds side that likes to play through the midfield and through physicality. Villa, on the other hand, without those midfielders especially, are now playing much more directly on the counter, a direct play with Morgan Rogers as the orchestrator. And so both teams can basically play their preferred style without facing all that much resistance. And so we're probably going to see a lot of chances in this match. For Leeds specifically, I have to highlight Dominic Calvert-Lewin because, as I said before, this guy has been a big game player for them this season. He scored against Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea, and City. And Villa is obviously another one of those big teams that are in the race. I guess maybe not the title race because that seems to be just between 2 teams now, but certainly within the race for Europe. So we could see him getting a goal there. But beyond that, I think it's going to be kind of tough for Leeds because Aston Villa right now, while defensively they can let up chances sometimes, I mean Martinez, as long as he has a net, it is very, very difficult to score goals against the squad. And especially with the form that he's been on in recent matches, I think Leeds are going to struggle to score too many goals here, despite the fact I do see them getting quite a few chances. And on the other hand, Villa, I also think we're going to get a lot of chances for the same reason. On a counter, I think Leeds can definitely struggle in transition. And because of that, I think Villa are going to have a lot of chances as well. And especially given, like, Unai Emery, for whatever reason, he always seems to be able to mastermind, like, 1-goal margin victories. Even when Villa don't really dominate or look that much better or feel in control, like, they always just somehow find a way to win by exactly 1 goal. And that's basically what I see happening here. So I'm going to go with a Villa 2-1 win. All right, next up, Brentford vs Brighton. 2 squads that are on complete opposite form right now. So Brentford, they were earlier in the season looking like a lower mid-table side, but now in their last 10 games, they've had 20 points. They just drew against the league leaders Arsenal. They're currently in a Conference League spot. They're 2 points behind Liverpool, which would put them in Europa, and they're 4 points behind Chelsea, which would put them in a UCL spot. So they are really in the race for Europe, and their form is peaking at the perfect time. On the other hand, Brighton have not won a Premier League match in 6 weeks, since literally the start of January, and they are now only 7 points clear of relegation with 12 match weeks left in the Premier League. So the main reason first off for Brighton being so bad recently, as we've said before, it's just Hurtzler being way too rigid structurally speaking. He is unwilling to pivot away from the midfield-less offensive formation, and it leads Brighton to be very vulnerable in transition, especially when they give away chances. And if there's one team in the Premier League that you don't want to be vulnerable in transition against right now, it is this Brentford side. Brentford have been very good on the counter. Igor Thiago has been deadly. Dango Uratura has been one of the most underrated players in the Premier League this season, at least in my opinion. And Kevin Schade, who had an injury, is also back. And he, especially in the counter, lightning fast player and fairly clinical as well. So Brighton could be in a lot of trouble here. Brighton, on the other hand, they haven't scored a goal in the month of February. The attack is looking quite dire right now. Matoma is not good. Rudder, Minte, nothing is working for this Brighton side, and so there's no reason for me to think that anything is going to change here, especially with Brentford having the home advantage as well. So, easy Brentford 2-0 win. I would be pretty surprised if Brighton honestly got a win here. Alright, next up, West Ham against Bournemouth. This one I think is a lot harder to call because both of these sides are actually on good form, and they both have something to fight for. West Ham have now won 5 of their last 7 games, and they went from almost certainly relegated just like a month or two ago to now being within 3 points of safety and forcing both of their 2 main relegation contenders, their 2 main relegation rivals, Tottenham and Nottm, to both have to sack their managers within the same match week. So Nuno and this West Ham side, they are peaking at the perfect time. They have several key players that have been stepping up for them recently, and they definitely have a fighter's chance at least of staying up the season. And as I said in the last video, I think they will, to be quite honest. Then we have Bournemouth. They're also just a few points behind Brentford, Liverpool, etc. They're definitely still in the race for Europe, and their form has also been amazing recently, and that goes through their offense. They have Evan Nielsen and Justin Kluivert injured, I believe, but basically everyone on that offense can be deadly, right? I mean, I've said this before. This is the main reason why Bournemouth is such a difficult team to defend. Ryan, so far, has gotten a goal contribution in every match he's played for Bournemouth since transferring over in the January transfer window. But they also have Admin Adley and Evan Nielsen, who, while not being, the top of the top in terms of offensive talent, they're not exactly players you can ignore offensively either. So it's very hard to adjust against this Bournemouth side. And then similarly for West Ham, right now, Somerville has been playing very well. Bowen has had not the best performance in the last few matches, but he can turn at any time. And Mateus Fernandes has been cooking in the midfield for West Ham. And I think that is the key to a potential win here for West Ham. If Bournemouth have a weakness, in my opinion, it is clearly the midfield. And if Mateus Fernandes is able to control the midfield here, West Ham are probably going to get the majority of the chances. And as long as you can get the ball, as long as you can progress the ball to the Somervilles and the Bowens, the 2 wingers for West Ham, you can take advantage of Bournemouth's, at least relatively speaking, weakness in the fullback positions. In the last few matches that these guys have played, the last 10 times West Ham played Bournemouth, there were 5 draws, and the last 2 times they drew, it was 2-2 each. And that's going to be my prediction again. I think this is also going to be a very high-scoring game. I'm going to say Ryan and Adley to score for Bournemouth, Bowen and Somerville to score for West Ham, 2-2 draw. All right, next up, Man City vs Newcastle. And we just saw Newcastle basically whitewash, destroy Qarabağ 6-1 in the Champions League. As to be expected, I mean, Qarabağ are kind of just happy to still be in the competition at this point. And so, yeah, I mean, there's not really much to be gleaned from that. But the issue for Newcastle is that lack of depth, right? They have Bruno Guimaraes out, they have Lewis Miley out, and they have Joelinton out. The midfield is basically Sancho Tonali, Joe Willock, and Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey being out of position, by the way. Against Qarabağ, they actually played Voltemade as a midfielder, but that's still playing somebody out of position. So essentially, Newcastle are in a position where they literally do not have enough midfielders on the roster that they have to play someone out of position every match. And even then, they're dealing with a ton of fatigue where, like every single midfielder that they still have, which is literally 2 people, they have to be playing every match 90 minutes essentially. Either that or you just do some sort of out of position rotation. Either way, that is a huge problem against Man City, right? I mean, we know how fast Man City's attack can be at the Etihad. We know how good their midfielders are. And with the situation that Nottingham have put themselves in, not really of their own doing, it's not their fault, it's going to be very difficult for Newcastle to keep up, especially at the Etihad. And also on the Etihad, I think the aura has kind of come back for City a little bit, right? Because I think a phenomenon about City at home in recent years, this decade especially, in the Premier League, is that it's like impossible to score there. Even when City played like this overwhelming attack and you can hit them in transition, somehow it's almost like there's like a force field in the City goal that just deflects all the shots off target or whatever. I don't know if it's a force field or if it's Donnarumma, but either way, for some reason, teams just forget how to score when they go to the Etihad. That happened to Fulham last match where they had more XG against City, but City won 3-0. There was another game earlier in the season in the Premier League, Palace vs City at the Etihad. Palace had more XG, but City won 3-0. I don't know what the cause of this is, but given Newcastle's track record, offensively speaking, away from home this season, it's not looking good for them in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, I think City, again, I'm predicting a lot of 2-0s. That's, I think, the most likely outcome here. We're also dealing with City, by the way, who are firmly back in the title race because Arsenal just dropped points against Wolves in the midweek. So they have all to play for. They're going to give it 100. And yeah, pretty easy win here, I think, for City. All right, next up, we have Nottingham against Liverpool. And again, this one's going to be pretty hard to predict because, as I said, Nottingham, having just sacked Sean Dyche and put in Victor Pereira, I don't know if that's going to benefit the team or not. To be quite honest, maybe one of the worst decisions you can make when you're a team that's in a relegation battle is sacking Sean Dyche. And Marinakis at this point, he's just trigger happy, man. We're on 4 managers now in one season. We're signing a guy who led Wolves to potentially the worst season in Premier League history. What are we doing, guys? What is going on at this club? Normally, when there's a new manager bounce, you expect the team to do better. But in this case, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if the squad, if not really the coach, it's not that Sean Dyche lost the dressing room. It feels like Marinakis has lost the dressing room at this point. And Victor Pereira, I mean, he was pretty good at Wolves last season, but you need the players to back you in order to have a tactical identity, and I don't know if that's going to happen here. Liverpool, on the other hand, also a very bipolar team, a team that's very tough to predict. They've basically committed to Verton Ekitike this calendar year, and it definitely has improved them, to be frank. But I would say Ekitike in particular, but also the team in general, they're still not very consistent. I would say this offense for Liverpool, they tend to be more consistent now against mid-table sides than they were earlier in the year. So just based off of that, if I had to make a prediction, I would go with a very shaky 2-1 Liverpool win. But yeah, this one's kind of hard to predict. I'm not confident about this one at all. I'll say Liverpool 2-1 though. All right, next up, Palace against Wolves. And I mean, it's basically going to be Strand Larsen's third Prem game, and he's already facing his former squad. I mean, we said, at least I said personally, I think Strand Larsen has a decent chance of actually fitting within the Palace system because he's finally going to have other attackers that he can play off of. Jeremy Pino, Ismail Sarr, Brennan Johnson, etc., whereas he had nobody at Wolves, at least nobody since Matheus Cunha left. So this is an opportunity for him to say, listen, I was not the problem, okay? You can't blame me for how Wolves is playing. I'm good. I'm not washed. And he showed that in that last match that Palace played against Burnley. They ended up losing, but Strand Larsen scored a brace. So whoever you're blaming for that loss, it's obviously not going to be Strand Larsen. I do think he gets another goal contribution in this match, just out of pure spite for his old squad. Not even pure spite, but just being thankful that he's out of that fucking hellhole at Wolverhampton. Yeah, Nottm. His Instagram post from last season, if y'all remember that, pretty accurate at this point. It is what I have to say about Wolves. To be fair, they did get that 2-2 draw against Arsenal, but part of that is Arsenal just being complete bottlers, especially that second goal. They just gifted that. And then the first goal, Hugo Bueno, master strike. Like, you can't really rely on that. Unless you have Mateus Cunha on your squad, which you don't anymore. That's not a reliable strategy. So, I will give Wolves a goal, simply because Palace are going to be a little bit sluggish after playing the midweek in the Conference League. But Palace does have too much quality. Even when he's tired, Adam Morton is still that guy for them. And now that Palace actually have attackers that can finish, I don't think that they'll be able to screw this one up. If they lose to 2 newly promoted sides in a row for Palace, man, it's finished. It's finished. It's a sinking ship. And it is a sinking ship either way, but I don't think it's gotten that bad yet. So I'm still going to go for Palace 2-1. All right. Next up, we have Sunderland against Fulham. Another hard one to predict because neither of these teams have been that convincing as of recent. Sunderland had this miraculous run of not losing a single match in the Stadium of Light in the Premier League this season, which to have gotten to match 26 of the newly promoted side and to have not lost at home once, very, very impressive. But that's gone now. Obviously, the Stadium of Light advantage is still there, but that moral sort of that intimidation for your opponents is no longer there, and so I don't know exactly how it's going to play into this match, but that is going to obviously hurt Sunderland. Also, what's going to hurt them is, I don't know if this is confirmed, but I think Granit Xhaka is at least most likely not going to be back for this match. At least I'm going to assume that he's not. But Fulham, on the other hand, they're also losing Sasha Lukic still in the midfield. I don't know when he's coming back, but he's definitely not coming back for this match. And again, it means Alex Iwobi is going to have to play yet another game as a defensive midfielder. So, not looking good for Fulham in the midfield either. So, honestly, of the two sides, especially at the Stadium of Light, with Habib Diarra and Enzo Lefebvre, I do expect Sunderland to control the midfield in this match, and therefore they should be able to control this match. They also obviously have Brian Brobby, who is just an absolute menace to deal with, right, as their striker, and I don't think anybody in the Fulham backline has the physicality to effectively neutralize him. So, I do think Sunderland can get a goal here, and as for Fulham, I feel like their attack has not been very consistent recently. They couldn't score against City despite having quite a few chances. In the match before that in the Premier League, they did score, but it was an own goal. So, I don't know if you count that either. So, Fulham has not exactly been firing very well recently, and at the Stadium of Light, it's just very hard to score there. So, I'm going to go with a Sunderland 1-0 win for this match. Although, again, a lot of these matches are very tough. I'm just going off home advantage here. I do think Sunderland can get a win. Next up, all bets are off here because Tottenham vs Arsenal. Again, a week ago, this was a clear Arsenal win. But now Arsenal has just dropped points to both Brentford and Wolves. They could potentially be bottling the league again. And Tottenham just sacked Thomas Frank and signed Igor Tudor. Now, there are some very reasonable questions about whether or not Tottenham's midfield profile actually fits with Igor Tudor's tactical formation. But one thing is true in the Premier League, and that's that 99% of the time, a new manager bounce helps the squad that gets that new manager. Because Igor Tudor is obviously going to be playing a different style than Thomas Frank did. It's going to take some time for the rest of the Premier League to adjust. And so there is definitely potential for an upset here. I mean, a perfect mirror to this is Michael Carrick's first game in charge for Man United was also a rivalry match against Man City, and United won that match, right? So, who knows? Maybe that happens for Tottenham here. What I will say, though, is ball progression continues to be a massive weakness for this side. If they had all their players healthy, they could genuinely be pushing for Europe right now. In fact, I've said this before. I've said they have a full starting 11 of players injured. That seems to have been the case for the last 2 years. But I actually took a look. This is, for your information, based on the injuries and Cristiano Romero being suspended, this is what Tottenham has as a starting 11, excluding the goalkeeper position, a starting 11 of injured players. So I wrote this out. At left back, it's Destiny Udogie. It is Kevin Danso and Cristiano Romero as their center back pairing, and Pedro Porro at right back. Basically, that's 3 of the 4 players in their ideal back line. But then you have Kulusevski, Madison, and Bergvall in the midfield, and you have a front 3 of Odegaard at left wing, Richarlison as a striker, and Mohamed Kudus as the right winger. I'm just saying, that squad on paper challenges for a European spot in the Premier League, but every single one of them is injured. Part of this is Atomic Frank, sure. Part of this is Tottenham failing to account for these injuries. Part of this is just the squad being cursed. But man, they're not in a good position here, injury-wise, and they need to pick up these points because you have Nottm, who have been muzzled by Marinakis, but they're still a threat, and you have a West Ham who have been on red-hot form recently, who are basically at Tottenham's ass, waiting for them to slip up, and trying to push ahead of them, and forcing potentially Tottenham into the relegation zone. So they have to be careful here. They need to win this match. And similarly, Arsenal have put themselves in a bad position as well, having dropped points in now 2 straight matches. Assuming City can win here, because Arsenal have a game in hand, that functionally would be a 2-point gap. And so Arsenal really cannot lose this match. If they lose this match, they could functionally basically be second in the Premier League by the end of the match week. But what I will say is, in rivalry matches, I don't think form really matters all that much. I think it's just a question of quality. And I remember saying this, I think, last time we had a sort of big match like this. It wasn't a rivalry, but Arsenal against Aston Villa. Villa were at the time on a 10 or 11 game win streak, something like that. But I said, I think when it comes to these sorts of important matches, especially rivalries, but these sort of important matches in general, I think it just goes down to who has more quality. And the last time these two teams played, sure it was at the Emirates, Arsenal destroyed them 4-1. Eberechi as he got a hat-trick. I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but if I had to make a prediction, first off, I don't see how Tottenham score, because, even though Arsenal just had a horrible performance against Wolves, somehow Declan Rice still played well, and Gabriel and Saliba are still a very, very difficult duo to score on. So, just given that this is a rivalry match, I'm going to go for an Arsenal 2-0 win. Again, all bets are off, but if I had to make a prediction, I just don't really see Arsenal bottling, or at least bottling as easily as some seem to think they will, because I feel like many times in the season at this point, it has seemed like Arsenal is about to bottle. How many times have they had a pretty comfortable lead and then it goes down to 2 points, which is functionally where it is right now. And this happened at least 2 or 3 times this year, but as you may or may not have noticed, they are still first in the Premier League, and they've never dropped out of that position. So it's hard for me to imagine, as bodily as this side is historically, that they're just going to completely flop and just stop winning matches. Sure, City definitely have a real chance now, but Arsenal are not going to take it lying down. Finally, we have Everton against United. For this match, I kind of feel like it's going to be playing out similarly to how United played against West Ham. Let me explain why. That match against West Ham, that was basically the first time in Michael Carrick's tenure that he had to deal with a low block. And a low block is essentially how Moyes is going to play. The Moyes system for Everton is make the game physical, play a low block, and especially at Hill Dickinson, I think that could be a huge issue for United. United have not shown an ability to break down a low block whatsoever this season. Not even just with Carrick, but with Amrin either. And all of their attacks are essentially through fast plays and counterattacks, which is not really a good strategy against a team like Everton. We also have on Everton's midfield, Dewsbury Hall, James Garner, they can basically drift and force a lot of backlines into vulnerable positions. And I think that is going to be the main weakness. That has been the main weakness of United. And so I think Everton can take advantage there. There's also obviously Ilman Ndiaye against Luke Shaw is a complete mismatch. And Everton are going to try to take advantage of that as well. So I could see Everton getting more chances here than United. Maybe I'm being a hater. I think it's good for the Premier League, honestly, for United to be playing well. It just makes the league more entertaining. But I don't really see it playing out very well for them in this match. Now, that being said, I'm not going to go for an Everton win, because the one thing Michael Carrick has shown, even again in that West Ham match, is that he has the mandate of heaven, because he's basically putting the Fergie mentality back in this United side. They've basically scored, they've saved points already twice, at least, multiple times in the Premier League, in Fergie time. Even against West Ham, Benjamin Sesko scores a goal in stoppage time to at least salvage a draw. And I'm not saying it's going to be in stoppage time, but I don't think United are going to lose this match, even though tactically I don't think this is going to play out very well for them. If Michael Carrick does still indeed have the mandate of heaven, I think someone on United is going to find a way to score, and I think this is going to end in a 1-1 draw. All right, there we go. I'm recording this very late at night, and that is why I have actually speedrun this. I feel like sometimes I say I'm going to speedrun videos and then I don't. But hey, 25 minutes? I think that's pretty good. If you enjoyed the video and watched it, like and subscribe. We're going to keep making content like this, and see ya.